United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll have board member comments. Mr. Briggs? Yeah, I meant resident comments, not board member comments.
Resident comments.
Yeah,
Yep,
you're fine.
yep, right there.
Did you call the speakers?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. My name is Jim Briggs, and I 1974 graduated in Wheatfield Senior High School. Received a scholarship through athletics at this high school. Went on to college, spent a year in college. Decided college wasn't for me. I notified the coach at the end of the first year that I won't be returning to offer my scholarship to somebody who wanted to go to college. I left college and I came back to the area and went to work for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company and entered an apprentice program. And through that apprentice program, I became a journeyman. And through that journeyman and my affiliation with my union, I was hired as a staff representative for the United Steelworkers and progressed to sub-district director of the United Steelworkers, position I hold today. Along with that, president of the Niagara Orleans Central Labor Council, which represents all affiliated unions, including the two unions that represent the workers here throughout Niagara and Orleans County. I stand here today in support of apprentice and PLAs. Apprenticeships are nothing more than continuing education. And any company can have an apprenticeship program, union or non-union. Non-union, I heard earlier in the presentation, non-union companies only step away from it a little bit more because it creates an expectation as you're educated to higher wages, and they try to avoid it by offering, but they're perfectly able to offer apprenticeship programs. It's not bound by the union movement. It's an option employers have. And to say that we're not going to agree to having requirements of apprentices on jobs or PLAs on jobs is saying to the next generation, hey, I'm a board member, I cared about you from grade K through 12, but when you leave, I don't care anymore. What happens to you? Apprenticeship programs are a form of continuing education for students from not only this school, but every school in this area that aren't college material or they like to do it with this, not with this. And to not support a program that brings your past graduates and your future graduates back here to have a successful life is ridiculous in my opinion. This is a no-brainer for anybody that would run for a school board not to stand up for the next generation. And I'm asking the members of this board and the superintendent to stand up for the next generation, create a path of prosperity for them, and require PLAs and apprentice numbers on jobs in this district. Thank you.
Laura?
Hi, my name is Laura Hirsch. I'm supposed to tell you my address, live on Lakeside Court. I have 4 children. One is a graduate, 2013 from Wheatfield, and I currently have a freshman and a sophomore. First of all, I want to commend everybody for the job that you guys have all done with COVID. The communication has been amazing, beginning with the end of the last school year and through present. But I came here today because my freshmen and sophomore are really struggling. They're struggling. They are in the hybrid program, so they're here every other day, and then the asynchronous days. Quite honestly, and I don't think my kids are an exception, they feel that the asynchronous days are days off. They're not really, they're required to check in. And I guess what I'm wondering is if there's been any thought given to combining the red and the black teams, right? Because I know that you can't have everybody at the school at the same time. But if you could combine them so that they're still alternating, coming to school every other day, but when they're home, they're actually on Zoom meetings and they're live with the teachers. So that the teachers are really, instead of having 2 separate classes that they're teaching, the same lesson to every other day, they're actually teaching the lesson once to all of the kids, and that they're getting 5 full days of school. And I don't know all of the logistics that you've gone through with all of the teachers and the program, so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I understand it, but my kids are suffering. They are truly suffering, and the other thing that concerns me is what Erie County just had a 5% positivity rate. At some point, they're gonna end up being home again, is my fear, which is gonna be even worse. So at least they're accountable to the teachers in the school every other day when they're home, and there's asynchronous days. So I'm asking if you can give some thought to possibly combining the classes so that they're at least having to have, they're accountable to being in class 5 days a week. That's all I want to say.
Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark Brennan. I'm a 1990 graduate of Niagara High School. I was trying to find a similar topic to come in and discuss the apprenticeship program with Mr. Briggs before me. And I said, what a better way of describing and give you my life and what has happened to me. In 1990, when I graduated, I was a 3-letter athlete leaving the school, uncertain where I wanted to go. Had no clue. Was a graduating senior. Came out, started out, decided to go down and that I should go to college. My father did not even graduate from high school. Figured it would be an awesome thing, go to college. I made 1 semester, realized it was not for me. I spent about a year stumbling around trying to figure out life and where I wanted to go. Ended up getting in an apprentice operating engineers local 463 at the age of 20. At 20 years, I started out. By the time I was 21, I was engaged to another Niagara Wheatfield graduate. At 22, I was married. At 22, I was actually married and bought my first house. So for a 22-year-old kid that came out within 2 years, established a job with healthcare, with benefits, was able to buy my first house, had my first child at 24, my second one at 26. While on my way from someone that never had any type of college education. As my children grew, so did I within the unit. My children went to a school east of here, directly east, and it kind of upsets me that the football team loses to them now because we used to be down back in the 1990s when I was here. But that being said, when that school district did their expansion, I was in an excavator and dug every single foundation for their expansion. And what a great feeling that knowing that your kids are going to attend high school here while you're here working doing. Graduated from the apprentice program, worked my way up through. Later in life, I got into safety training. Ended up in outreach programs, in college programs through WVU, West Virginia University, and ended up going and becoming the safety coordinator of Local 463. From there, I ended up moving my way up through becoming a business representative for 463 in 2017. So from a kid that had no direction leaving high school, ended up representing a labor union. In 2019, we merged. 463 as part of a merger from our international is now merged with the Operating Engineers Local 17 based out of Lakeview, New York. I still am a business representative. I have a represented membership of 1,800 people. So for a kid that walked out of here with no direction in life, and now sit here and come back and represent 1,800 members, that's quite an accomplishment. The reason I bring that to you before, without that apprenticeship, without that building block in between, and having that bridge to the next network of life, I wouldn't have ended up where I am. There's no doubt in my mind. So, I mean, everybody knows the histories and what can happen across 31 here. I was born and raised. I don't live on there anymore, but I live in Sanborn. But to take that life path and end up, I think we owe it to the next generation to sit here and really consider these apprentice stipulations, because what it does is it offers that employment, that training for that next generation to come up and come through and continue forward. It's not a big ask just to put a small stipulation on there to say, you know what, let's employ our future. Let's make sure that our future is going to come in, be from Niagara Wheatfield and Niagara County, Western New York. But let's make sure that they have employment opportunities with some of these capital improvement projects that we put up.
John?
My name is John Shear. I, like Mark, am the business manager of the local union of Niagara Falls, local union 237. The electricians local cover all of Niagara County and western Plains County. I too I graduated from Niagara Wheatfield School in 1987. No, different. I went to college. I finished my 4-year degree at UB in biology. At the time, the job market was very poor, and I was married pretty much the same year I graduated. And so worked as locally as a maintenance worker, which I had done working through college, and was able to get accepted into the apprenticeship of the electricians union, and it's been a great experience for me. Put in my 5-year apprenticeship, and I worked hard for them. I served on the executive board of the electricians union, and last year I was elected business manager. So I'm proud of that. I guess I wanted to reinstate that I've been blessed. I was blessed with 3 beautiful daughters. Have gone to Niagara Wheatfield and Niagara Wheatfield graduates. I was actually working here when my daughter was on the cheerleading team in high school, and the job finished up at 3:30, and she cheered till 4. And I'm like, I can't go sit in the blanks or in the stands there. I'm gonna look like some kind of, that's a clerical person. So I'd sit in my truck boiler and wait for her to get done. So but I guess so. On the third, I wanted to reiterate what Mark was saying. That your apprenticeship are very important, and the opportunity to work for our people to work on the projects in their areas. The other side note I wanted to thank everyone. We're in the process of buying Burkle School, and I want to thank you all for that opportunity. We've been doing our apprenticeship, our theory part at Niagara Falls High School, and it's going to be a great opportunity to be able to have that building to do more hands-on training for our members. So, I wanted to say thank you for that too. So, I guess that's all.
Thank you. Bill?
Good evening. I'm Bill Feckety, born and raised in Lewiston. I can't make the same claim that these guys did. Graduated from Niagara Wheatfield and Lewiston border. But my dad did teach here for 30-some years, I believe you would say. So Niagara Wheatfield was definitely a part of my life too. I'd just like to talk for a minute about how the apprenticeship actually works. And I'm the president of Local 17 Operating Engineers. We have 33 apprentices currently. It's a 4-year program. The training program itself is funded by our signatory employers. While the apprentices are attending, they do 26 weeks of education at the training center, 26 weeks of work out in the field on the job training. They come out of it at a journey person level, competent in their craft, able to perform the tasks daily in a safe manner, which this year especially has been, I'd like to commend our entire membership. We haven't had a single, we're essential personnel from the get-go. We haven't had a single occurrence of or positive test for COVID-19. We lend a lot of that to being well-trained and able to follow safety guidelines. Excuse me, but our apprentices, as opposed to going to post-high school higher education, are afforded a 4-year training program funded by the employers, and instead of incurring or accruing, tens of thousands of dollars in student loans, they actually make tens of thousands of dollars in income and start building their pensions and health care for the rest of their careers. As far as the cost of the projects that these apprentices work on, as Mr. Briggs said, the open shop non-union contractors, they have the option to do this too, but they view it as an expense because it's possibly, when there's a requirement for an apprentice on the job, it's probably an extra person for them. For our contract, contractors, it's part of their investment in their future workforce. So they have these apprentices on the job no matter what the specs say, and they view them as an asset. And they work for, depending on the situation, as much as 10 to 15, 20, even $20 an hour cheaper. So the overall cost of the project isn't affected by these requirements, but the opportunity for the young people that are moving up the ladder towards a career is really important. And we just want to make sure that they're afforded those opportunities at every level. So, Lori, you consider for any of your projects upcoming, that's at least part of the bid package. So thank you for your time.
All right, I'll move on to the consensus agenda items. I'd like to call for a motion to accept the minutes as submitted, to approve the cellular phone stipend for policy 5322, to approve the donations as listed, to accept extracurricular activity account reports as listed, to approve the sale of real property, to approve IEPs as submitted, and to approve fundraisers as listed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Anything to separate or discuss? All those in favor then please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Call for motion to accept the personnel report as submitted.
So moved.
I'll second it. I'd like to separate F2 and F15. Anything else to separate or discuss?
I just wanted to ask a question on 7.
Go ahead.
Without mentioning the name, the rescind the appointment as a cleaner, but in terms of when has she been or what happened there?
So when we had the, added the daytime staff cleaners, this person accepted the position, accepted it as a cleaner, not knowing that
Okay, so it's just a lateral.
she's going back.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Anything else? All right. All those in favor then of accepting item 1, 3 through 14, and 16, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right. Mr. Stack?
Thank you very much. On F2, it's a pleasure to have Jessica Bauer here, who's appointed as a building-based substitute coach. Jessica Bauer has her social studies certification. She's going to be a building-based substitute at the high school immediately. On F15 was unable to make it this evening, but Jesse Lane will be filling in for the user position. It's currently open as a substitute. And fantastic for her work also. Thank you.
All those in favor of then accepting those 2 positions, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Congratulations. All right. Sure.
I know many of you in different capacities throughout the community, and I just wanted to thank all of you for the opportunity. Mr. Stack, Mr. Lujanich, I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity. I'm a graduate of 2004. All of my family has gone through Wheatfield, and like I said, I know many of you. Mr. Siriani, I worked with your wife for a few years. Mr. Myers, I graduated with my brother. So I have many connections to you guys, and I hope I get to stay here for the long haul. And thank you so much. I'm very excited to start.
Welcome back back home. All right. Over to Capital Project Committee. Bob?
Yeah, so today we had our capital project meeting. And a couple things we discussed was our completion of our first step, which the football field, which is exceptionally unbelievable. It's a nice field.
Is your tree mic on?
Great work was done.
Push it like that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we discussed our different phases of our project. The first one was the football field that was just completed, which came out really well. It was pretty good showing what came in this today, you can see the lights out there really stands out. Our second phase is the next one that's going into work, and currently we had questions about a PLA, so they came in and they discussed about the PLA and the effect on what we're doing here. They kind of explained what the PLA was, who actually is using it in the school district, where we actually stand with it as far as the process, how it goes for sending it out and have it reviewed, and the time frame in which it takes to do it. Just so everyone understands, I'm totally for having a PLA. The only thing I say at this time is we're a little behind the 8 ball at doing it at this point. In order for us to have a PLA right now, it probably set us back into October to get our project done by the numbers that have shown us in our capital projects. But as far as future, I'm totally for it. I think we should look at it and review it and do it in the right time frame where it doesn't impede on our project. Other than that, like I said, I actually went to a trade school, so I totally understand how they, trade school. And I came out as an electrician. I was an electrician in a union for 15 years. So I totally understand how that works. And the only thing I see on this time frame is the timing. So going forward, I'm totally for looking into this. I don't know about the rest of the board, but going forward, that would be my recommendation. But as far as the project right now, we're currently in the bid phase, and it would definitely set us back if we just were to do it now. All the information that was given to us tonight.
All right, any questions for Bob, the capital project committee?
I don't know, if we could,
But did you
going
want,
forward,
I was gonna talk under old business, but if you wanna.
Well, you can, I mean, this is just like for the projects and stuff like that. Any
Yeah.
questions
Yeah,
for
but no, I
current
don't-
projects and stuff
Okay,
like that?
yeah.
We'll bring that up under old business again. So anything with the projects and what's been at. All right,
Oh, sorry, just one comment, I know I jumped in late there. We do have a little under a $200,000 surplus from the first phase of the project that will be able to go into the second phase, so it did come in under budget, which was good news.
policy committee.
So we had our meeting prior to the capital project meeting this evening, discussed a number of policies that will be brought to the next meeting for discussion.
For me to present, basically.
For Steve to present.
Yeah, thanks. All right, we have a fundraiser informational item there. The Superhero Virtual Fun Run by the Ben Group. Are you participating in that? Get the drone phone. President's report. Just a few things. We had many of us attended the virtual NISBA conference. The law seminar, it was great. A lot of good points brought up. It's interesting to hear the legal effects of COVID across the state. And as they presented the items that are affecting rural school districts, urban, suburban, and the city school districts all differently. While there's many of the same issues, obviously, one of them being what each of the days look like across the area. A lot of the law pieces talked about how there's districts out there with absolutely no in-person, involvement whatsoever. Everything's virtual. And I know that a lot of the lawyers were actually commending the districts who were able to put something together where they are attending, and especially I wanted to chime in, but they weren't allowing us to, about how we are getting our kids at the elementary level here every day. So when it came to the actual convention, there were a couple good ones in there, a couple bad ones. It's hit or mix like it is usually, but still not like the in-person ones where you really get some really good feedback and questions, because nothing that I attended allowed anyone to ask questions or participate. So Also, if you haven't gotten to see the lights and drive back there and see the complex, it's great. I mean, now that we actually have a facility that we can, have people come to and they talk about it, the largest the largest compliment I get is that and this, I go put this back in the capital project committee, is that through the design phase of it, is that we designed something that when people come here, it feels like they're on a college campus. It doesn't feel like a high school campus with that back there. And I think it has a lot to do with the layout and where we place things and everything with that. And then you look over, you see the grass fields, and it's just phenomenal the way the layout is there for that. So that's it with that, and I'll bring up my other points during our old business with the discussion of that for that piece. Anyone have any questions for me for my report? I hope not. Good. All right, superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. For anybody in the audience, if you want afterwards, there is chili in the back. That's compliments of the board appreciation week. Was a few weeks back, and we every year, I don't know if it's really appreciation for them, the fact that I'm the one cooking the chili, but I know I said last meeting, thank you for all that you do. You do it as volunteers, and the school community certainly benefits from having people who step up and take their time to help our children. So thank you. One of the items I'm going to ask the board to at least discuss, if not act on, and probably would fall under old business as well, except for that it would be a new business action item, would be the pre-K program. We did talk a little bit about that last meeting. We said that we would bring it up again at this meeting. Allison could maybe talk a little bit about what those numbers were for the program. Oh, I'm sorry. So if you remember, then let me just bring everybody up to speed on this. There's a withholding going on in New York State with monies for school districts. It's at 20%, and that 20% withholding, make sure I use that word, also applies currently to our pre-K program. Those dollars, as a district, we said initially, let me say it this way, we said that we would not be putting any of our monies toward the pre-K program. It would all be from the pre-K grant. Because of COVID, we decided for the first semester to take on whatever those costs that 20% of the first semester was. So the question was, for the second semester, do we want to do anything differently? And what we can't do differently is have families subsidize the other portion of that. So the real option is for the district to absorb that 20% for the second semester as well.
Hey, Dan, is it possible that we might get that 20%?
Great question. And I maybe mentioned this last time, but Bob's question, is can we get that 20%? Remember, right now it's just called a withholding. There's even a question as to whether or not it's even legal for them to reduce it, because unless the legislators vote on it again. If I had to guess of all of the funding that is being withheld right now, which one they would make sure that they make good on, I would have to guess it would be the pre-K program, but that would only be a guess.
Yeah, the last meeting, Allison, the reason why we asked was to see, I think everyone supports the pre-K. But the question is, will it affect negatively, whether it be K through 12 or employees of the whole district? So you seem to be uncomfortable. Is there a number that how it would affect the budget and everything else surrounding it?
Anything that's added that wasn't initially part of the budget is going to affect something somewhere. We have built into the budget additional expenditures for things that we have to annually, such as like special ed program, stuff like that. So if we get less students in than we anticipate, we might have some savings there that could offset that additional cost. And the last time I had actually forgotten, the superintendent reminded me that it would only be half of what it was, so I was thinking it was the full month or.
Okay, what about the 200,000 from the capital projects? Is that possible that can be transferred to that area?
No, the money that's in the capital project couldn't be moved to that area.
The school,
What's that?
the sale of the school.
Great question. Bob just said, what about the sale of the school, which was just approved in the consensus agenda items? That's $190,000. You can certainly, that total would actually pay for the full year of the program if you were looking at offsetting. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I know that you probably all know this, our biggest obstacle probably this year isn't even having the funding as a district to pay for things, right? It's exceeding our budget. So, you know, that's a larger obstacle. So now, that said, the amount of money that's expected to be paid for the pre-K program is all supposed to come from the grant. And right now, it's not. So I don't know how that would be looked at if we had to write something up if we exceeded by that amount. You know, I would feel like we could justify that if we were really in that predicament.
What's the dollar figure looking like?
I think it's like, I want to say like, we talked about.
Yeah, it's about $130,000. That was the total. So we already said with the first method that it was going to be half of that. So it was about 65. So we're talking about another $65,000, $70,000.
Finish out the year with a slim possibility that you might see some of that.
You got it.
And I'm going to say it's bigger than a slim possibility because it's the one thing that I'm talking to a few of our area, state representatives. They're, if anything with the school cuts they're getting hit really hard with is with pre-K funding. Because while it affects us, since we only have like 100 and some odd kids in there very minimally, districts like Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Utica, Syracuse, where there are like 500-600 kids in that program, they are getting just slaughtered in their budget with it, right? Because there is, there is no tax base to increase or draw that from cities, since they're mostly aided to the school districts. So I think that of anything, that's the one piece that they're going to backtrack on and say we're going to put the money back in for that. And I would be surprised if it wasn't for the entire year and go back with that piece that was already withheld and put that money back in, not just the remaining money from that. So. In terms of risk, this is one of those amounts of risks I would be willing to take and gamble on what the state's going to do with it. Not to mention, I mean, these are our youngest learners. Right. You're setting them back now by not preparing that money, a $65,000 investment into those 100 and some odd kids where that prepares them better for school could easily be 10 times that if they don't progress, and now we're doing putting them in remedial programs, or there's an IEP put in place or 504 to help them. Now you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that, as opposed to just giving them the foundation that could propel them out of that direction.
So again, if you would, I would ask that you act on that. Next, we are considering student substitute cleaners. It's something that the district did in the past, and it would be an opportunity certainly for some of our high school students. They'd have to go through the same process of all the hiring for many of our substitute cleaners, but we haven't entertained that in the past, but it's something we're considering. Everybody knows how hard it is to certainly find substitutes for many positions. But we looked into at least a couple districts who are doing it and doing it with some real positive reviews and effectiveness. So it's something that we've done before. If you hear about it, I think we're at the point where we're going to put it out there. To be frank, nothing would have stopped actually someone from putting in before. The fact that had the limited hours, we would have maybe said no to. But given the need, if somebody based on their age was only able to work 3 or 4 hours, we would, I think, certainly honor that at this point and bring them on board to help out. So it is something that we're moving. I wanted to just share that with all of you, but I think it's something that makes good sense. I was hoping to have word on winter athletics. There's nothing new. I'll just leave it at that. Well, the last thing, so I'll jump back to this. Mr. Stack and I are going to do a brief presentation on what you see up on the screen. So let me jump to these other items first. You've probably seen statewide in the region, COVID cases are absolutely increasing. That's no surprise to anybody who's been following this and listening to CDC. So it's no surprise that that's happening. There's certainly been within the state. You've probably seen individual buildings that have closed statewide. 5 days in the region. The number of COVID cases are all those things absolutely increasing. That's no surprise to anybody. Follow the. So we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing as a district and how that looks each time we have a case in a minute. Transportation. I apologize to those of you who listen to all of these meetings because you keep hearing me say something about transportation. We need your help. If you're able to drive your children, please do. We were able to make it so that all of the families who moved from virtual back into our regular program, we are able to transport them, but it is very tight. And I don't mean tight that the buses are filled, because it can't be. I mean tight because we have just about the number on most of our buses now that we can. So it's something that we're going to keep a close watch on. It will be, I think, an issue depending on if we have another move, more people moving from virtual to regular rather than regular to virtual come weeks 21 through 40. Okay, so that's just the facts. Again, if people are able to drive, we encourage them to do that.
I just want to weigh in on that piece to reiterate that we as a board have discussed now in multiple meetings that if at the elementary level, it means with enough people shifting from at-home learning or from virtual to in-person learning, if it means that it's going to change what we're doing with this program, where it is no longer we're no longer able to have kids attend daily and switch it to hybrid, we might have to take action as a board and decide, are we going to impact 80% of the families or just have something impact 20% at that time. And so again, I can't stress, I'm asking the board members here to stress whenever you talk to families, particularly in the elementary level, if you can drive your child to school, weigh this in your mind. Is it going to be more of an impact on you and a detriment to drive your child in the morning and the afternoon than if you have to find a babysitter for your child every other day, if we have to switch to hybrid because we cannot, because if busing and transportation forces us to go to hybrid. So that's the piece to really reiterate to parents right now. So, and I know that people that I've talked to, was one of the benefits of sitting out there passing out candy on Halloween was you had a lot of the parents of the younger kids coming by, and when I stressed that to them, that was the main thing. Hey, it means that I have to ask my boss to leave a little early to pick up my kids as opposed to finding a sitter every day. I'm willing to do that. So, make sure you're doing that, please.
And the second last item, food service. I know we've put out the messages. I know they're on our signs in front of our buildings, but we just want to reiterate that there's free breakfast and free lunch every single day for all of our students, and we encourage our families to take advantage of that. Okay. Most recently, our food service department also put something out regarding the asynchronous days to make sure that people knew that there would still be food provided on those days as well.
All right. Any questions to the superintendent on his report? Oh yeah. Anything about what we've covered right now? Do you have any questions of? All right, gentlemen.
Okay, I'll get us started we've now had 3-4 cases now in our schools. Four cases in our school. We told everybody we expected cases, they're happening. We wanted to give everybody a little idea, kind of a glimpse into what it looks like when we have a case, what we do on our end, the work that we do with the Niagara County Department of Health, because we think, we know some families have already been impacted, and we have a pretty good feel for the way this works now. I will say this, if we have multiple cases at a time, our ability to handle that, to manage that, to do the tracing with the health department, to make the phone calls, certainly would be in general. So we'll put together some slides. The notification comes one of two ways for us. We either get a call from the family who just got their test result, or we get notified from the Niagara County Department of Health. In more of our cases, we're getting notified from the person before the health department. When that happens, we immediately contact the health department. Whenever I say we, it's almost always Mr. Stack. I should probably mention that he's done an incredible job organizing this. It's been an interesting task for him, but he's handled it incredibly well. One of the most important, most crucial things that is looked at when there's a positive case is what's called proximate contact time. And that means if you're together for 60 minutes with someone, and it does not have to be consecutive, that proximate contact time would lead to someone needing to be quarantined. Okay? And if you could jump to the next slide. And that look back period is over 48 hours. Now, with our day, right, our black and red day, at the secondary level, really we end up really looking back to 1 day, which would say helps when it comes to keeping the numbers small that would need to be quarantined because you have less contact. Okay? That's very important. Next. The quarantine timeline is not established by us. Okay? It's established by the Niagara County Department of Health. We work with them to make sure that we have the right date. Sometimes they'll find out some other information which could change the date. The important thing for us is that we do our look back to those 48 hours, determine who was with whom for 60 or more minutes, and then those individuals are quarantined. And one of the things I like to tell people is if you have that contact time with an individual who is positive, so being in contact with someone who's COVID positive means you're quarantined. So COVID leads to quarantine. Quarantine doesn't lead to quarantine. Got it? So, in other words, the person who was with someone for 60 minutes isn't positive themselves, they're quarantined. Just because they were with somebody else for over 60 minutes doesn't mean those other people need to be quarantined. So, someone being quarantined, being with someone for 60 minutes, doesn't mean that other person's quarantined. Only if you're with the person who's positive. Okay? Does that make sense?
In almost every single situation, we have been the first people to know, generally from those that are either infected or their family members calling us, and that we have initiated the contact with the Niagara County Health Department. There's one circumstance where that did not happen, and the one thing we learned from it, this is a learning process, is that in our communication with them, we want to also verify information that they give to us and ensure that it's accurate. So that's one thing before we go to the next slide, I just wanted to add to that. But so far, it's been a pretty good partnership, a good filtering and flow of information between the two of us. And obviously, as the cases rise, so do the complexities with the communication, especially at their level and their timelines and getting back to us. talked a little bit about how the tracing is initiated, but the Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health contact tracing really gets its legs and its support from us, the district. So what I mean by that is verifying through eSchool, things such as attendance, then subsequently what bus was ridden, what areas in the building were frequented. So that sometimes entails us to have to look at bus footage, sometimes camera footage in buildings to identify and ensure that a student was there at a designated time frame, a designated time period. Those are things that we've encountered a little bit. And as we do receive notification that in fact, a student was here, was infected, or a staff member was here, was infected, the next step is obviously identifying every person that had that cumulative 60 minutes or approximate contact time. And then from there, the phone calls from the district, those courtesy calls, we have seen a very thankful response from those that we've contacted, those parents, getting in front of it before they get either a blanket email from our school district stating that there was a case, or they receive a contact tracing call. And just as an interesting thing that we learned through this, the contact tracing calls are coming from the state. They're coming from the state level. They are not coming from the local level. So sometimes there is a bit of a delay in that communication, and their ComCare system is the county calls it, between the county and then the state, subsequently then the tracking.
Let me just add one piece to that. If you go back to that slide, this is important. We use the word, thank you. We use the word courtesy calls because really it's not the district's obligation to make those calls, and we're not the contact tracers, and we don't want to pretend to be. But if we don't make those calls right away, quite frankly, those students who would be the ones to be quarantined would remain in the flow and would continue to go to class, possibly with it, right, with COVID, until they were contact traced. Or the other option would be to say, we have a case, we're going to wait for them to do it, and in the meantime, we're going to close the place down for a couple days. Not doing that. So what I was referring to earlier, whenever I said, as of right now, we're making those calls. If we get hit with a bunch of these, the option may only be to close down the building, right? So, because we just wouldn't be able to get the information out. What we're not going to do is have kids for multiple days in contact with other kids who would have otherwise been quarantined if those calls could have gone out faster because of the inability to make those calls at the state level by the contact tracers.
I can tell you that certainly the county appreciates that. That work that we're doing in front of it for them, and then subsequently the sharing of that information with them, it helps them get the information necessary to the state in a timely manner. We would put ourselves in a position where we could maybe go 24, 48 hours where there was potential exposure. We're trying to avoid that and be extra cautious, obviously, extra safe. As you can see here, Niagara County Department of Health consults with the district and also the state DOD, or DOH, I'm sorry, to determine who should be in quarantine. So sometimes even if we have a remote question, aside from the proximate contact, like we had one today, we had a teacher that may have had just a touch over, taking out some of the passing time between the two classes. Yes, it was still time enough for us to have to quarantine the staff. So that's just an example of that. And the district does provide the information on those impacted by quarantine measures to the Department of Health. And we typically have been faxing them the information. Parental emails, parental names, student names, date of birth, phone numbers, emails, and such, so that the state can then be aided to do their work and subsequently that contact tracing. Again, the state is the one doing that. It is not a local control mechanism. So often we are ahead of it, more so than the county and the state. Follow-up communication. What we we have been doing, we have the luxury of having teachers move to virtual instruction and then provide directions to the class on how students can access during the quarantine period, the actual classroom, the activities that are going to be done. That is something that we have had to adjust to. The teachers have been magnificent with that. We have had a few teachers now on quarantine due to proximate contact. They are instructing from home. So they are going above and beyond to ensure that there isn't a break in the instruction. So that's a very admirable thing. Every single time, as many of you know, the district is providing through Blackboard Connect notification of a positive case. It doesn't matter necessarily where that building is at all. Whenever there is a positive case, we are notifying the entire school district so that we can be transparent with communication and inform our public. And once the case is verified by the Niagara County Department of Health, namely me, has to daily go in and fill out the COVID-19 report. That information is public. It's updated daily. So if you went in there today and just typed in New York State into a Google search bar and put in COVID report card New York State, it would pop up. You'd be able to see every single report that has come through so far this year. There are some added pieces to that report. The report continues to get longer, and I anticipated maybe even more field being added to it. As Mr. Lewandowski stated earlier, we do have some rising cases. The return to work in school is the next phase. What happens after that quarantine period? The Niagara County Department of Health issues a clearance via email or a text to the individuals that are on quarantine, clearing them for a work return or a return to school. The school nurses are given the paperwork, and we ask for the paperwork by the parents, and we track that. Also, the employees, once they get the email or the text, they're sending it to me, and we keep that in a Google form so that we have an accurate log of that time that was spent out, and then also can issue clearance for the employee to return to work when the quarantine period is over. Probably have some questions. We tried to frame it so that we can take you through the lineage of what it looks like.
What is the duration?
14 days.
Normal, yeah, was it? I know we've had a couple, so I mean, was it 14 days?
Yeah, it's 14 days.
That's, or whatever their guidance is there.
Is it like 10 though if you actually have?
That's what I was wondering about tests.
The only direction that we've been given so far is the 14 days by the health department. And that's what we go off of right now. Yeah, for the
But I think
quarantine.
Steve's talking about the positive case
Yeah.
because of the account like they looked at and tested it out. So, yeah, that's different. But for anybody who's quarantined, or remember somebody who's positive, it could be more than that.
So
Depending on
they
how
have to get a
retest.
test. The ones that were positive would have to test before they come back.
Are those who quarantine, are they required to be tested before coming back?
they are not required to be tested, but we do recommend it.
Could they be tested and return early?
No, unfortunately, you can't. That's a really good question. Mr. Lee asked if a student test or an individual test that's on quarantine, can you return early? The answer is no. We've asked the Niagara County Department of Health that.
The one thing that did change, so separating somebody who's quarantined from somebody who is considered symptomatic. If you're symptomatic and student goes home, right? Before, initially, it was that and. They had to have the out so many days, they had to get a note from the doctor, and they had to be tested. Now, it's not and, it's or. So, you know, from the doctor, test, 14 days, any of those can get you back. That's for somebody who's just, who has symptoms, isn't positive, and wasn't in proximate contact with somebody that had to be quarantined.
Right, someone not subject to a quarantine order. Yep. Great question.
So, and let me just clarify this because I know a lot of people have this question. So because we got the email today, that email is going out to the parents of the school in which there is a positive case from us. We are providing a communication piece for them. And if parents are not getting that, they should check with the school of why they're on the list or not to, with the correct email or so.
Absolutely, parents should notify us. On the Blackboard Connect today, it went through to 99% of the emails that we had on record. We actually can track that. But that's not to say that some people are not receiving them. They should notify us, absolutely.
Any other questions?
So how's it work so far? You've quarantined the entire classroom, correct, today?
We have quarantined entire classrooms at the elementary level.
Right.
And at the secondary level, it becomes a little bit more cumbersome for two reasons. We have a red and black schedule. So the first piece of that is sifting through that particular student and then identifying what classes, each of our class periods are 41 minutes in length. So that's not the approximate time, which is the 60 minutes. But many of these kids have multiple classes together. And remember, that approximate time is cumulative. So you have to add up all the time that those students were in contact with potentially other students in other classes. Might be in science class together, might be in social studies class together. They might be in a science lab together for, an extended period, right? Subsequently, gotta look back at the bus and make sure that, if that student was on the bus, were they on a really long bus run where that time could have added up both morning and afternoon in combination over that 60 minutes. That is something we've had a challenge with.
Is your question about the elementary cohort?
Yeah, I'm interested in how that's working out as far as entire class. How many kids? 20 kids?
No, less than that. About it was the last one was 12, I believe.
So they're all
The
put
smaller class sizes.
at home for two weeks, can't come to school. And
It depends on the look back period. When a student first was symptomatic versus when if a student was asymptomatic, when that test date was. So often it's within that 14 days.
Is your question though, they go to a virtual program?
they do virtual.
They do.
Have you run into problems with, parents have to figure out childcare? They were planning on them being in school.
I mean, we know when we make the.
That's what logistically how you're
we know when we make those calls to families, that's the first thing that, right, they're dealing with, right, is the childcare issue, who's gonna do what now, and we've certainly had staff members who are also parents, so, we've seen firsthand the impact.
And the key piece of that is it's not really us. This is the guidelines from the Department of Health.
There's no
So it's the
choice.
Department of Health saying you have to quarantine this class, because obviously our whole idea is to include here as much as possible,
That's right.
but they're the ones who take that lead piece. It's not the school district saying you must quarantine. Although we are helping them in the fact that process of them getting in contact with them can take some time.
I have a question. Can you explain how it works for siblings? Like if somebody in elementary level has to be home, how does it work if you have siblings? I feel like there might be some confusion with that.
So let me go back to I think what you're asking is if a sibling has to quarantine.
Correct.
Right, not if it's COVID, not if they're the family member. So if a sibling has to
Sorry, I
quarantine.
should have clarified.
It's okay, no, it doesn't mean that the other sibling needs to quarantine. Now, quarantine doesn't lead to quarantine.
Right.
So just because they're quarantined and they're in contact with their sibling, doesn't mean that their sibling also needs to be quarantined.
Okay,
Unless they start showing symptoms, unless they're COVID positive.
So do you feel like it would be better for families to keep, there's obviously no punishment if they decide to keep them home, or would you want them to send the siblings? I'm just curious, because I have kids in two different buildings.
Yeah, no, I think that's a family decision.
Okay.
I think, I just always, how would I do it, right?
Yeah.
If I felt like there was an increased chance, if I was starting to see maybe a couple of even minor symptoms, stuff like that, I think I would then be more cautious, right?
Yeah. But does the district look down upon that if you decide to keep one
Anytime
home
the
because?
student is, in that case, you'd be keeping them home because you were sick?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just,
No, good question.
it's like all the.
Well, the key piece of that too, though, is that would be if you call and say, I'm keeping my child home because I'm worried about them possibly having it, that would require a test then to come back into school in that situation, correct?
If they called saying they were showing symptoms, that's right.
Yeah.
Test or doctor's note or
Well, that's the point. I mean, you talk to a lot of pediatricians, they won't even see you unless
Yeah, they
you get a
won't.
Some of
test.
them all, that's right.
You know, so.
So we've had a few, but, you know,
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
just so we knows, we are, Mr. Stack and I are gonna do a little video this week, probably put it out Friday, similar to this shortened version, families, so that we'll be posted.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Any other questions of Superintendent or Mr. Stack? Superintendent with his report? No? Good. All right. Items for board discussion. Anything that's up for discussion that's a new piece to discuss tonight that's not an action item? Anything going on? All right. Actually, did I miss? I think I missed it. Ex officio student members report. I totally zipped right by that.
Well, first of all, we had Spirit Week, or we're still, Spirit Week is still going on. We started it last week. And the last week, and given the circumstances, it's done pretty well. I mean, can't really do anything besides dress up and kind of hard because the people don't really want to do it. But I think it went well. Also, I wanted to reiterate, I talked about last time about the temperature standards things and how like nice those are going in. And now like I was talking to my parents and they teach it different on district and they were saying that at their school like their students just are supposed to stand themselves at home. So I just think really, really fortunate to have like that technology stuff at school. Also, the free lunches have been awesome. I know a lot of people are really taking advantage of them, and I look forward to them every day. You're gonna get like some things different instead of like last year I would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and that every single day. So it's nice to be able to have options, and I really enjoy that. Also for sports, pretty much all fall sports are kind of over unless you're the girls hockey team. We have a championship game tomorrow. So if you have a yellow card, that and T, like Grand Island. And then also one thing that's coming up that's really exciting is we have Adopt a Family. It's kind of a late start, but we're getting ready to go. We start the 12 days of giving, which is a little bit different this year because of the whole hybrid model. We have to like combine days so that everyone gets a chance to bring in like each like can't touch the books, can't fruit everyone, and bring in each one. So we have like the study for that coming out by the end of the week. And also we're still doing the trees. Like if you walk into the school during Christmas time, there's always gonna be trees lined up, which is really cool. I think it's really unique to Niagara Field. It's really nice to see around that time of year. So this year, if you're a club, you would just like get the tree and decorate it in like the teacher's room. Or if you aren't in the building, you can just pick it up and take it home to decorate and then bring it back. So we won't have like the day after school where everyone stays after to decorate, but everyone can still get a tree and decorate it on their own. And yeah, and I just did have one question about the like asynchronous day schedule because like I was looking at the like calendar like red black days and I know like there's the days coming up where everyone's at home. So I was wondering like if that would like skip a black day or I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah.
So, and you're gonna get something by the end of the week from the middle school, high school, they'll be sending something out. But what we did is we didn't want to inconvenience parents who already, because they already had the first semester schedule. So we didn't adjust the red-black schedule, the days even out for the semester anyhow. So we didn't make any adjustments. So it's as if that day just doesn't happen. So whatever was on the schedule before, if parents turned in, you know, that first semester to their work and made adjustments accordingly, we're going to leave it that way. Okay, except for the asynchronous days. Great question.
Any questions for our ex officio board member? Listen, I tried getting them to do Decades Day to dress up and everything, but Rick was totally against it because he said he finally threw his wardrobe out from the 30s. So, I mean,
I couldn't find anything to fit.
60s.
Can I ask, why is it taking so long just to put out a note to parents? Because they keep asking that same question, that what's going on with the, say, Sacred Days with changing the schedule. Couldn't we have just simply a couple weeks ago when we just made a decision said, guys, it's not changing the schedule. These are just days off from in live, in person.
No, we couldn't right away because we didn't know what schedule we'd be under until my last email went out to families last week Friday, right? So they've put something together. I would imagine it'll be out in a day. But remember, it wasn't until last week Friday that we said, hey, we can do all of these things for all of the levels.
All right. Old business. Mr. Sirianni?
Yes, I'm going to talk about PLAs. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot for the last several weeks, and I do understand we're under a strict timetable, like Bob said. I don't disagree with what Bob said. And I don't want to put this district in a precarious position of having some big issues on a project that it's about to start. And in talking to the trades, they don't want us in this position either. They kind of want to, and sometime in the future, maybe partner with us. But there is another option that might delay it for a week or two, but it won't cost no more money. And I sent an email to Dan, and he sent it to you. And it come from an attorney that you have her name and number, you can call her. And she works, it's an independent organization, my understanding, New York Foundation for Fair Contracting. So, for a second here, if we take PLAs off the table, but we put an addendum on apprentice agreement that there's no PLA, so it doesn't affect that, you would have to delay November 12th deadline for the contracts, and they would have to hire, in this agreement, they would have to hire a certain percentage of apprentices. Okay? Apprentices are cheaper. It will not raise the price of it, and we can get some students, whether it's 20, 25%, whatever that number is, part of the program, part of the apprentice. Steve, you mentioned earlier under pre-K, you know, it's worth $60,000 to $120,000 to help the pre-Ks. And this isn't going to cost us so much. It might cost us a week or two in delays, but we're still in early November. So we can discuss it, but I would like to entertain a motion that we put in an addendum delaying the August 12th deadline for a week or 2 weeks, whatever it's going to take. You guys have now sample apprenticeship agreements, and this would not cost no money. This basically would not delay the project other than a couple weeks. And I don't think it's delay the project. It's just going to delay the bids coming in. And I'd like to make that motion and put our young kids, get them some training. I think that is an area where it's not going to affect, we won't talk about a PLA at this time. It's not going to affect whatever Turner did in his presentation and how young kids learn the trades. So I would entertain a second too for that.
So the week or 2 weeks you're talking is for what reason?
It's for our Dan, an attorney, to meet with, it would be basically, it's delaying the bids by whether it's 7 days, 10 days. The bids are supposed to be in by November 12th. Right. Okay, so you would delay that and put an addendum in for apprenticeship and agreement.
How does that affect it?
The question was, how would that affect this particular project? Giving it little thought only because Rick and I spoke today, and then he said what he did. I didn't even have a chance to read it yet today. The documents, I looked at them one. Off the cuff, I think the first impact might be, and I don't know this, and actually I think a couple of maybe gentlemen spoke to it. It might push bidders away from the table, possibly, right? Because if they're bidders who were planning on bidding but don't utilize apprentices, and if the argument is, well, we don't want anybody who doesn't, but, okay, but that, I think that's the only impact off the cuff that I can think of that it might have.
And just based on what you said, that's hypothetical. And I know you said that. We don't know if we'll push it. And quite honestly, I don't care if they're pushing. We're still going to look at the lowest bids whenever they come in. We're looking at, one, saving money, and I believe putting apprentices, a percentage of apprentices on the job would save money. But two, we're looking to increase the trades. Just like a letter I received from, it's not a letter, but just a couple of things. Tim Sealer, he's the one who does the project labor duties. He's the one that works for many school districts in Niagara Falls. And utilizing apprentices can reduce labor costs, but we don't have a formula for doing a study just to justify the use of apprentice language. The stated goal of apprentice language is really broader than money. The language is intended to encourage continued development and supply of well-trained, well-qualified craft workers in a community. The broader goal is the basis for most owners to require apprentice participation, and it is allowed under labor law. I think we should support that and ask for an addendum through Turner to do that. And I got to ask a question since we're talking about this. Turner, I question their credibility. I'll be quite honest with you. I was told 2 weeks ago that Turner says PLAs aren't used in school districts.
I don't know who told you that.
You did.
No. We said, I actually said right here at the meeting, the school districts that did do them.
No.
So,
well,
and I said,
misunderstanding.
Yeah. So what I said was we do that Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and then there were a whole list of others that the individuals who were here last time said had done them, and only one in that group had actually done one in 2002, and that was Starpoint. So that was just information that I provided to you in response to the whole board, in response to some statements that were made here, just to make sure people understood where they were happening.
When I first talked to you on the phone, whether it's a misunderstanding or not, Dan, I don't know, but I asked you why did Turner do a PLA originally, okay? And you reached out to them, and you indicated to me they didn't know they did PLAs K through 12, okay? Because, well, that's still a question. Why didn't Turner, a year and a half ago, come to this board when they did their presentation, talk about PLAs as an option, as another tool? Turner, who obviously ignored Niagara Wheatfield, is doing a PLA in Albany School District and Syracuse, in my understanding. So why wasn't that brought up? I remember when we hired them, okay? It was in another room over there. One of the things Steve mentioned, one of their project manager was a Wheatfield resident. I don't even know which one. And the board felt, because everything else was good, the board felt, well, maybe because he's a resident, his kids were here, he kind of overlooked the project a little nicer. Almost like the building trades do for apprentices when their kids work and live in this district. Okay, but Turner didn't even mention PLAs to us. In PLAs, there's an option of a $30 million project to save 3 to 5%. Why wasn't it brought on the table? And I'm asking you a question, Dan, that I don't expect an answer today. I want to know why Turner didn't bring that up as a tool. I mean, that is just totally negligence to not use all the tools in the toolbox. Whether the board would have supported or not a year ago, that wasn't even mentioned.
Well, his answer tonight to it, because he presented to the capital project committee on that is that he gave us a breakdown of the districts that used PLAs, and he said this would not fall in the scope of where we would recommend a PLA to be given because of the amount.
$30 million.
The dollar amount.
I think he still should have brought it up, given the school board the option.
Well, I think in that regards, the school board should have been, we should have been then researching that to know that's something that we should have asked for in our specs of hiring someone.
I don't disagree with that. Well, you know, none of us are from the building trades. I didn't know about a PLA 3 weeks ago, and I told you that. Okay, but I think we should at least get an addendum change to allow apprentices, a percentage of apprentices on the job in this year.
To discuss, we need a second for this to be
Yes.
continued in discussion. I will second it so we can continue the discussion on this. Right. Is there any questions or discussion then from any of our members right now on this?
My question out of the microphone.
My question is, Rick, you know me, I was a shop teacher, I sent kids to BOCES, I've been involved with all kinds of outside work. When I was at the Falls with the project we had there. So I'm not against apprenticeships. Who's monitoring this? So it goes into a bid and we say, hey, they're gonna get 3 apprentices. Who says that they show up to the job, and how do we monitor that this contractor is following through on this? Because I would want those apprentices on the job. So where's the checks and balances?
You know, John, I can't answer the question. I would assume the project labor,
The construction manager.
yeah, I would assume that, but I don't, you know, I don't know everything about these. But I know the board, based on the last meeting, seems to support the apprentice program. And I understand the timetable of even thinking about a PLA at this time. And that's why I'm trying to do what we supported last month, put apprentices on there that really isn't going to be affecting the timetable or the cost. And that's what I'm trying to do.
How does that affect our kids coming out of school?
What do
Do
you
they
mean?
get to go into that trade, that program?
Well, the kids, I think they can better explain how they go into BOCES. And I think the last time, a couple of those building trades did explain how they go from after graduating, what options they have to go into one of the building trades. So I'm not sure.
I guess my question is that do they seek Niagara Wheatfield students, or do they just what becomes?
Oh, are you asking me if we did this, we would want Niagara Wheatfield residents being the apprentices.
Right.
That could be wrote up in an agreement. Just like the city of Niagara Falls is negotiating a development downtown, and it's my understanding the developer is, the first thing he's asking for is Niagara Falls residents first,
right,
and then Niagara County residents.
Right.
Okay, so depending on what trades people will be involved with our projects, and I don't know if any of these can add in there, any of the building trades, but we should be able to add the trades, the apprentices should be from our district. I know under a PLA you can, that's just a fact. Under an apprentice program, I don't know that answer. I know you're meeting with the trades tomorrow, I believe you are.
Oh, tomorrow, but that's on the calendar now, right, as of right now, yeah.
That's,
It's on the calendar, it's on my
Yeah.
calendar now.
and I know this attorney, is willing to attend if the trades are to reach out to him.
I have a question. So, because your PLA requires a feasibility study before this project is spec'd out, does this, apprenticeship program doesn't require any additional feasibility studies, nothing that, just incorporated in the bid, adding and utilizing the apprenticeship?
Yes, there's no cost to the district of the feasibility study. And I did find out the feasibility study.
I'm sorry, Rick, just so the question was, Rick, if you know, the question was, do you know if a feasibility study needs to be done with an agreement that's just, has to do with, it's really an addendum, that has to do just with apprentices, with adding apprentices to the job?
I hate to say something that I'm not 100% sure of, but it's my understanding, it's no.
So then, in my opinion.
That's a question you can ask tomorrow.
So then, in my opinion, especially in the economic downturn times like this, I would think that any opportunity for this district to save money should be looked at, especially if it's maybe only delays a week or two to get another bid in there. I have to believe that not too many contractors would run away from a project that's going to continue on their business and offer out their members some work. So I have to think that we still have an ample amount of contractors giving bids if we entertain this option, because that's my opinion. I think it's worth looking into if it's going to save that type of money, especially for the budget crunch issue.
Well, just trying, and so you know, if we save money on this, and just answer, any money that's saved through this only goes right back to the capital reserve fund. It's not used for, we can't use any of this much savings for anything else in our budget. It's only for capital project use. So I think when we say we're going to try saving money to use for pre-K, none of this will help us in pre-K or any of the other budgetary expenditure issues we have.
With those items that go to the ed extras that they.
Right.
outline in the
Correct.
project.
Correct, but I just, when we mentioned that, you know, we're looking for money for pre-K, this is not what we can find.
It would be incorporated into the project, whatever we're doing it.
And without no study, and there isn't one necessary for this, without no study, and there isn't one necessary for this, I have no way of guaranteeing you it's going to save money, but it's not going to cost any more money because the apprentices make less money as it is. It's about putting young kids to work.
Well, and Rick, I want to clarify one thing. Last week, it's, Mr. Briggs, when you presented, and Mr. Print, there's none of us that said anything that we were against PLAs or apprenticeships last week. We were very for it. I believe what the discussion was, we were worried about the timeline of the current project of where that falls because of, making sure things were done within, because I just want that piece clarified, because I'm hearing, that's the one thing I heard from you guys was that, it sounded like you thought we were against apprenticeships. We're not, and we're not against PLAs. But when you have a timeline of a building project where you have to make sure it's done when there's no one in the school, no kids are, in the school, that's the one thing with school districts, obviously, that are, the prime time of doing those projects are that summer months before kids come in here. And if that, if anything causes a delay where it takes us out of those summer months and then pushes us back a year for any part of that, that's going to be detrimental to the district, and obviously cost the district more money. So I just want to make that piece clear that part was conveyed to them correctly, that we are not up here as a board against any of those aspects of this.
Yeah, and the building trades never thought that. They were respectful to what the board's opinion was last week, and they gave another option which I didn't know about. because they didn't want to put us in a bad spot. You know, they didn't want to put us in a spot where with time schedules. They fully understand that. But I believe an addendum by just extending the bid time, we'll just say 2 weeks. I don't know why we need 2 weeks, but just say 2 weeks, does not jeopardize anything going on our projects.
Allison, what would your, as from the business side of things?
I just have a question, because I know it's been said a few times, that this may save money, but I'm a little confused as to how it would save money, because it's my understanding that, those kids would work under the direction of a full-time worker, correct? Like when you're an apprentice, you work under the direction of, so if we're paying an additional cost for the contractor work, we're paying an additional cost for the person as an apprentice. I don't understand how it saves money.
I'm not sure what you mean by a contract to pay an additional cost. We'll just say he needs 5 men on a job. They make, I don't know even know what their hourly wages. The benefits and all could be $35 an hour. Well, the apprentice is only making 15. So there should be no increase in costs. Okay? Any contractor that bids on his job, whether it's union or non-union, should be paid prevailing wage. I mean, that leaves law, okay? And I believe, and that would include apprentices. Now, did apprentices work below prevailing wage? I don't know that answer.
I can shed some light on a few of the questions.
Yes, please.
If the board doesn't mind. As far as, I'll start with the first question that you got on the floor right now. As far as the apprentices, what happens is our apprenticeship program.
You can take your mask off now.
Our apprenticeship program is a state-run program. So there's different levels of pay for different tiers of the apprenticeship. Where a first-year apprenticeship may be at a 65% of a journeyman scale. You know, then a 70% in the second year, 80% in the third year. So it goes up from there. So to say, I guess to kind of explain the way of saving money is if you have an apprentice that is equally as talented as a journeyman worker, you're getting that apprentice to perform that work at an 80% pay scale. And that pay scale is determined and listed with the state of New York for that year of apprenticeship for our apprenticeship program. So as far as the prevailing wage scale that a journeyman would make, to answer one of the questions that came in from over here, who would track it? The construction manager would track it on your certified payrolls. Because they're required to put those certified payrolls in for each person, including the apprenticeship, or the apprentice that would be making a lesser wage. Sometimes the benefit packages, there isn't a savings in there, they're comparable, because you're dealing with a wage plus a benefit package. So the apprentice may be making the same benefit package, but he's only making a reduced version of the journeyman's rate, even though he's performing the same task.
So instead of paying prevailing wage, as New York State requires.
It would still be prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage
for
for the
a
apprentice.
second or third year apprentice, yes.
Got it, understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
As far as, I guess I shed a little bit of light, the building trades 100% understands. And this is in a conversation that I've had with board member Lee and board Sirianni. We don't want, you are too far into the bid process right now to delay a project. And we totally understand that. It's great to hear your comments earlier that you were in full support of the PLA. I know they've worked great in the Niagara Falls School District. Some of the studies, we're talking about studies. In order to put a PLA in place, there has to be a feasibility study that is done to show a cost savings, or cost analysis, I'm sorry, that has to be done on the project. And that's where the 3 to 5% comes in. That's only done in the first phases, the start of the project. When Niagara Falls High School uses theirs, they'll do that study to show if we put this PLA in place, the special terms and agreements that are agreed to, that over this whole length of this project, those terms and agreements are going to help reduce that cost to 3 to 5%. For the board to enter into that now, you're so late in the game, absolutely. The comment that Turner made earlier tonight prior to me arriving would delay your whole process, because in order to get that feasibility study, there's an expense with that. So you have to first save that expense, and then second, show how much you can reduce the cost of the overall project. There is no feasibility study to show, and I think that's where Mr. Sealer, when he reached out to you, there is no feasibility study out there right now to show whether the cost of an apprentice is reduced, increased, remains the same. And it's not required to do just an apprenticeship addendum. The thought process behind the addendum, when we talked to both of you gentlemen yesterday, was because you're approaching your last day. I think it's October or November 6th is the last day for an addendum to go out in your current bid process. There's a time frame that you guys were following. I believe it was November 6th, the last day for an addendum, because I think it's 4 business days prior bid opens. The comment when I talked with the legal counsel from the FFC, what I had asked was how would the easiest way to go about doing that? And what she had commented is, because you're outside that 4-day window, would be to just kick the bid opening dates back a week or two and let the board do its due diligence and talk to its own legal counsel and looking at adding this apprenticeship language into as an addendum. My comment to Mr. Sirianni was, your timeline may be affected right now with the bid opening dates, but it's not going to be affected. This should have no effect on your, I think it's April 21 mobilization dates for the project. You're going to delay a few weeks here just to see if this is feasible. You can put it in there, you can save money. And that's where our legal counsel had to provide terminology and quoted some labor laws to go ahead with that process and just kick the bid dates back. Like there was a comment earlier that it may deter bidders. I don't think it'll deter bidders. The reason in that 4-day window is because nobody has openly, publicly revealed any of their bids yet. If their bid package is done, all they're going to do is sit on it for a few more weeks. If you add that addendum, by extending that bid date, you're allowing them to reevaluate their bid package and see if they can still meet or possibly save money on the project and put in a lower number because of this apprentice language it's in. So I don't know if that explains any of that any better. If there's questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
No, I thank you, Mark. And that's why I was very cautious to say it without a study. We would save money. But the fact is, and I mentioned this to Dan before tonight's meeting, about what if everything was equal? What if the school district, the state law says the school district has to save money, but the state law doesn't say how much. It could be $5. Then you take that lowest bid. But what if everything was equal? Say we saved $1. Shouldn't we be focused on the apprentice program for young kids? It's not always all about money. As long as we don't entertain going into something that's more costly, if everything is equal, then we should be looking at saving $1, at the same time putting young kids to work and letting them learn the trades for future generations, like a number of gentlemen said tonight.
So how would that work for, like I said earlier, students, somebody from this area in that program?
I guess the question, Mark,
Mike.
did get sidetracked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As far as the apprenticeship, where they're coming from, I believe the FFC attorney had put just some guidelines what to follow. I don't know if you can narrow the scope to say whether they specifically have to be an Niagara Wheatfield alumni or work or come from within the jurisdictional or boundaries of Niagara Wheatfield School District or within Niagara County. I don't know if that local hire can specifically go into an addendum like that. That would be something to ask the legal counsel. But I mean, as far as the apprenticeship language, us as a trade, could I provide you with that? Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if we can put that on the record, but I could absolutely do that. And even more so, actually, one of the one of the kids that, one of our last graduates that we just graduated in January, actually was he was one of the last 463 recruitment members that I took in, was a Niagara Wheatfield graduate, went through the BOCES welding program, came to us, worked his way through the 5-year program, and actually just graduated in January. So to narrow it down, and I'm only speaking on the operating engineers. I can't speak on all the other trades that would be involved in the project. But absolutely, I can at least get you one from Niagara County, from this area. Whether you can put that on the record legally, I don't know. That's something for legal counsel. I guess we had, trades had an open meeting, I believe, with you at 1 tomorrow, through Angela Cornell. And this was kind of, the discussion we were going to come in and have was at the future PLAs. That was what was on the agenda for us, is to come in and just answer any questions that you may have. If you wish, I could reach out to the legal counsel of the FFC, see if she can come attend and ask any of those questions.
We have our own legal counsel.
Okay.
I wouldn't take yours, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Okay. Does that answer any?
Any other board members, questions, discussion? All right, then it's been moved and seconded to, I want to know from your, before I put that on there for any discussion, what would your recommendation be for this piece? The direction of the superintendent.
I bet all of you could guess. I wouldn't do anything without putting some thought into it. I got emails about this today. I don't know how much earlier Mr. Suriano received the information before me. It sounds like a couple board members had some conversations about maybe this, or at least PLAs. I don't know, whatever time I sent it in an email is the first I heard about it. So would I recommend something that I know absolutely nothing about? Absolutely not. So you certainly have the ability to act, but I wouldn't make a recommendation without having any information.
All right. All those then in favor of, you have to restate the motion. I honestly just went blank with the whole, what you exactly said.
Enter, the first phase should be delayed the November 12th deadline, extend that 2 weeks, and at the same time, put an addendum in for the apprentice, the language we have here, the apprentice agreement into the contract, into the bids. So they would be able to hire some apprentices.
Okay, so let's rephrase that then. So we are looking to delay the bid period,
2
and
weeks.
extend it 2 weeks, I would say.
Yeah.
You're late, we'll be extending it 2 weeks, and asking for new specs to be drawn for the bid. Is that correct? What it basically would be?
We would be asking to put an addendum in, to add apprentices in the workforce. I don't know what you mean by the specs.
Well, I mean, of the bid, I mean.
Yeah, I understand.
So you would have to, have you ever done it? Have you ever had a situation with an addendum on bids? So we'd have to consult legal counsel before even doing that piece. So if they come back, our legal counsel comes back and says that they don't recommend doing it, advise against it, what's our recourse?
Well, look, I guess first of all, we'd have to vote eventually tonight if we're going to vote. I don't know what legal counsel's going to say. Okay, if it's not illegal, I don't really care what legal counsel says. Okay, I'll be quite honest with you, Steve. If it's not illegal to do it, I don't care what they say. This board makes the decisions, not the attorney. Obviously, if legal counsel says, oh, it's illegal, you can't do it, then I'm going to back off. But if they say it's legal, we don't recommend it, or if project manager don't recommend it, I don't care what they say. The board makes these decisions.
Yeah,
We're looking at.
But Rick, here's my problem though with that. And again, I'm not against the idea of this, but they go tomorrow to legal counsel. Let's say they do say it's illegal. We cannot do it or something like that, but we've already made the motion for us to go and do that. They have to still delay that project because we made a motion to delay it until we now can reconvene and meet to bring it up. We wouldn't be able to bring it back to the original date then, would we? Because we've moved that piece. So, I mean, my thing.
You're saying if they say it's illegal.
You're correct. Yes, you're correct.
If they say, and it's substantiated that it's illegal to do, then somehow then we can't do it. Okay, I just cannot believe, based on this attorney, that it's illegal to do if we move quick.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I definitely support the apprenticeship. I think it's amazing. I think we should do whatever we can to help our kids. But what I don't support is making a decision right now when I feel like we don't have enough information. And I don't think, I'm going to speak for myself, but I don't think that's a good move. I think we're all in agreement that we think this is a great idea, but to be kind of forced into this situation to make a decision right now, I don't think is a good idea. That's my opinion. So I don't know how all the rest of the board members feel, but I feel like we're kind of being put on the spot a little bit because we want you guys all to know we support this 100%, but we do need to know what the facts are, what it looks like, what our legal counsel says, and I get where you're coming from, but I personally don't feel comfortable making a decision tonight.
You said by the 6th is when we have to, when we could do an addendum or whatever, right? Mr. Printup, is that what your mention was?
According to your guide. Now, by delaying the bid opening, we'll obviously supply you with more time to talk with the legal counsel and see if this is a feasible idea.
Or we could meet Friday night after you have tomorrow to work through this, and then the next morning we could meet like 5 o'clock on Friday or 4, and meet and then entertain this motion once we get that information. Would that work or not?
You mean, you look into it and then we.
Yeah, I mean, Rick, I'm just gonna explain it. So if I tabled your motion to a meeting on Friday night, it would still be 2 weeks from then because we have it till the 6th to do that. That way I would feel more comfortable getting more information from them and from researching this piece and doing that then. And I know you said that we make the decisions and go on. You know what? We make the decisions upon the recommendations of the superintendent and with information supplied by our, no offense to, I know you're probably a very good attorney, from our people. And that's the thing. I mean, we are the people of record when something this goes on. And then down the road, if all of a sudden this doesn't work out and it forces the project to cost more because of when the bids, action with the bids being delayed or anything like that, we're the ones that answer for that piece of why we now delayed that piece and cost more money from our capital reserve fund for that. So 2 days is not going to hurt anything if we set a meeting right now, because we could legally set a meeting right now for Friday and give these people some time to work on it.
You're gonna meet tomorrow. Are you meeting?
No, the meeting that's on my calendar at this time for tomorrow would have nothing to do with gaining the information that you would need to make this decision. That would be discussions with our school attorney based on the date that the bids are to be received.
So you're saying only if it's illegal? I mean, forget the recommendation. If it's illegal, then I can rescind the motion. That's not a problem if it's illegal. But what if it's legal?
I'm saying either if it's legal, whatever, we just meet and we table this motion to Friday night and then just come in to vote on that motion Friday night.
I think this is the first we're hearing about this part of it, okay? So I do think if we have a little opportunity to really understand it, get other opinions. It's not gonna hurt anything. And then we can meet on Friday. That's only a few days,
Here's the problem with delays, just like the last delay. I was under the impression, I was really disappointed and somewhat shocked at the email Dan sent us. I was under the impression the board supported the PLAs.
No.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I know that. I'm talking about the last meeting. And it seemed like the only emails we received was questioning everything the building trade said. You all read the same email. You know, they talked about, well, what's a local workforce? Well, not every building trade guy lives in our district. You know, you question, well, they said this school district, this school district, and this school district, they did it. Well, you hit them with questions at the top of their head, Dan. Okay, they might not have remembered everything, but the fact is, PLAs are used in the state. That's just a fact. Okay, so you know, it seemed like everything in the email was negative on everything the building trade said. I didn't hear no questions about why Turner didn't put it on the table a year and a half ago, but everything was questioned. So that was easy. So that's what makes me red flag. Do I have a problem with two-day delay, Steve? Absolutely not. Okay, but it red flags me, these delays, is there's always something else that's going to be thrown in there. That's why I'm trying to understand. Are you talking about delaying it to find out not the logistics? Because I thought we delayed it 2 weeks to find out the logistics of a PLA, which didn't happen. Okay, so you're going to delay this.
Quite the contrary. We did get the logistics of it, that from a recommendation that it wasn't going to be effective for us at this time because of delaying our bid process for that particular part.
Yeah, but
and cost.
If this is illegal,
it doesn't matter if it's legal or not.
No, I'm talking about
the fact of the matter is we as boards need to do our fiduciary right to have all the information before a motion is voted upon to make our decisions. Right now, if you ask me right now if I was going to vote on this tonight without information from the superintendent or any questions that could possibly come up that I can say that we can get to the superintendent by tomorrow that we need to answer in order to make a very informed vote on this and moving that timeline even 2 weeks, I would say I'm voting no against this tonight, not for the simple fact that I don't support the concept behind it, but for the simple fact that I don't have, as a board, the information necessary for this, because the process of this should have been the members of the building trades calling myself or you, which they did call you, and saying, hey, can I sit down with you and the superintendent right now to bring a proposal of something that we have, and then put it on the agenda so that the public will know that this is going to be talked about and that this is what the district is going forward. And then we could have started the process of finding the information out there. But instead, this is information that we're getting piecemeal from meetings here of people going through you instead of the person who is in charge of the school district. And, I just want information.
Let's correct that. Yeah, they come through me. How many parents and sports people go through you and not through him? So don't be accusing me of something.
And they call him, because that's what the stuff is.
Okay, and they did call him, and they reached out and set up a meeting with him for tomorrow. So you do the same thing when it comes to sports. The only thing I'm trying to get with you is, you want to delay this 2 days? I don't have a problem. But what's the delay? Is it because if it's illegal, I fully understand it. What if the lawyer comes back and says, it's legal to do it, and this is how you got to do it? Then what's going to happen?
And this is how, if it's legal to do, and this is how you can do it, then we just got a piece of information that they don't even know how to do right now.
I'm asking you the question. And you don't have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, that's all I wanted to hear.
No, because then that gives them time to figure out, because we're making a motion telling them to do something that they've never done before, that they're going to have to go and research now. And then down the road, they come back to us and say, hey, guess what, guys, we can't do this. And now we've delayed this for this much longer.
2 weeks.
It's still a delay.
It is. I mean, this is the first hearing. I think it's more than 2 days. 2 days just to make sure we get the information. Everybody feels comfortable about it. We understand it. I don't see a problem with just waiting 2 days.
So we
Get
set
that
up a
answer.
meeting for
I'm
Friday.
more than happy to come back and do it.
Can I just
Go
clarify
ahead.
one thing when it comes to communication, and you talked a little bit about it. At no time was I actually contacted by the building trades themselves to have this conversation. Rick and I spoke, but the meeting that currently is on my calendar for tomorrow was actually set up by our assemblyman. Okay, so I didn't have a conversation with the building trades, who could have picked up the phone at any time and called my office. I just want that to be clear, that it's been through other channels.
But I have been in touch with you. And
I said that. Yep.
I've been in touch with you right along.
All right then. I like to call for a motion to table this to 5 o'clock. We meet at make a 5 o'clock meeting on Friday. Does that work? Wait, Maureen, that works for getting the press release out for it? That gives us the time for the press release for a meeting, 5 o'clock?
We need 72 hours. So to hold a special meeting, we have to give 72 hours notice.
That was 20. That was
For a special?
I thought it was 72.
Keep going.
Oh, look that piece up then, because that's going to.
Yep.
Because that'll hinge on that piece, because maybe we'll have to do a vote tonight on it.
Well, can you do a vote and based on what the attorney says, maybe even a second motion and you reverse it?
No, I'm not even comfortable with that. I support PLAs, that the reason I wrote about Mr. Burnett was to try to get more information. But Julie says I still have questions and there's still answers I still want. And even though I support it wholeheartedly, with Andrew to try to save money too, I can't even vote on an if call if the attorney's going to say one way or the other. I'd rather have all the information in front of me, those answers, especially if we're going to say that part of it is that we want our students to continue on, have a, the words word, but basically that they have another avenue of education. But if we can't guarantee that our students are going to be the ones doing that, I still can't vote for it until I have those answers in front of me. That's how I feel.
Any other comments on that while we're waiting for that piece to look up? I don't have my school law thing loaded on this laptop, so I couldn't pull that piece up.
I would just even say, apart from legalities, whether it's legal or not, to have professional recommendations that come, with knowledge and good guidance in our best interest, like we ought to consider those and have all the ducks in a row. I know when I just happened to sit in on the capital project this evening, and Turner addressed PLAs. They gave us this list. I don't know if you saw this. A laundry list of ones that they highlighted 3 that used PLAs and they were much larger projects. And even in discussion, they brought the notion that they would do this kind of conversation like way beforehand, preliminary planning. And they brought up the point that they surveyed the different contractors, and I think they said about 30% replied that they would not even entertain bidding if PLAs were a part of it. So I guess the question is, if this is now permanent, would that drop off a lot of bidders? Like, I would be interested to know the answer to that question. Well, I just think we need more time to do our due diligence.
Well, Maureen, it is 24. So
What is it?
it's 24 hours.
Oh, so we can do it.
So we can do it
Special.
for a special meeting.
Okay.
So 5 o'clock. So I'll make a motion to table Rick's motion to a special meeting at 5 o'clock on Friday. Is there a second to that table? John seconded. Any discussion on the tabling motion? All those in favor then please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right, it's tabled to 5 o'clock on Friday. That will be the only agenda item that we have on there then. All right. I have a request for you, Mr. Prince. So on our capital project committee, we have resident members that serve on it and bring, something skill set that they have. And I think one of this whole discussion and this process could have also been avoided if we did have someone on there who had knowledge of this. Would you as a resident we have one open seat. Would you as a resident be interested possibly of serving on our capital project committee?
Unfortunately, the only problem is you have to live within the Niagara School District.
Where you were in?
I think actually about 3 houses.
Oh, I keep forgetting Sanborn goes that direction there.
Mark, would anyone else in the trades, I know John Shear from Local 237 lives in the district, or anyone else?
I'm not 100% sure if it's.
Would you mind, for me, seeking out if anyone in there would be interested in serving that's a resident?
Absolutely.
Okay. I know there's a gentleman that came last week who said he's a resident.
Scott Bridges involved for a similar situation as me. He actually just is over the line.
Didn't someone last week say they have kids in the district?
Yeah, that's Scott. What? One said you never seen him, or two, I thought.
Well, I mean, just if you could reach out to them and, and both that can go through Bob as the chair of the committee. But we could use another community member on there.
Oh, Art? It was the other gentleman, Art.
Okay. But that would help us out because we do have one more spot on that.
It'd probably be
That committee.
beneficial for both of us, really.
All right. Any other old business at this time? Any new business then? No, we're gonna do that pre-K right now. All right. The one item of new business then was to act upon the expenditure of funds to fund the remaining balance of our pre-K budget. Is that the way of making the motion, I believe? Because it's,
They might transfer monies to the pre-K program from the general fund.
If necessary.
Right. So I'd like to call for a motion to transfer the monies from the general fund to the pre-K program in the event that it is not funded by the state. Is there, I'll make the motion. Is there a second? A second.
Is this through June specified?
Yeah, well, because it would be this fiscal year, so.
This year.
Yeah.
Sure it's qualified. Yeah.
Right, and that's the one thing is I want to stress that we don't make this precedent setting from the state saying, hey, look, they could go and do this during a pandemic. We can, cut 25% of them all the time from it.
Covered it before, so.
Right. All right, any other discussion of that? All those in favor then please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Any other new business at this time? All right, public comments?
Oh, I have no business.
Oh.
Since Marissa brought up the Christmas tree decoration, I always handle that every year. So are you guys in support of me taking that over and contributing money for our new board members? We always adopt a tree from the board. They test my limits every year for my creativity, but it's for a good cause. And we usually just chip in like $20 each, and I buy all the decorations. You guys literally do nothing but take credit. So,
Which is perfect.
yeah. So that would be
I'm
my
good.
only new business. Is everybody good with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, for you it's 30, but
Like the senior discount.
definitely.
Jail.
She does do a nice job, I got her.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, my AARP.
I'm almost there. I'm right there with you.
All right, any other new business then? All right, public comments? Anyone from the public have
Look
any
at Dan
comments?
getting his money out right now.
I'd just like to comment real quick that really appreciate the forum you guys created here. I've been to several of my own school board meetings. You guys do a really nice job taking into consideration all assets, issues at the table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Briggs?
Yeah, look, I made my comments at the beginning, but I want to make sure I remake them because sometimes I think they get lost, and I feel like they got lost tonight. This isn't about PLAs and apprenticeship agreements. It's about kids. It's about kids and their future. So, as you deliberate this, if something's illegal, it's illegal. I get it. I got it. But when we can make adjustments to affect the quality of life of the next generation, that should weigh just as heavy as everything else you people just talked about. And I think it got lost somewhere in your discussion. So I wanted to restate my position. This isn't about a subject apprentice or PLA. It's about the next generation and how they're gonna live a quality of life like we had. Somebody looked out for us, it's time for us to look out for them. Thank you.
I think you're right, and I don't think it got lost, but just like I said, I would like to see it come from our area as well. That's the only concern I have. But believe me, it did get lost.
Any other members of the public? All right, board member comments.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on like what Bob said. Jim, it didn't get lost. As a district that pays for slots for most of these students, vocational education is a very strong program. I get and the other gentleman spoke to, there's college isn't for some kids. I was a shop teacher. I taught those kids. I trained them, sent them to try vocational or Niagara BOCES when track closed. I'm dating myself, but they're great programs, and that's what we do for these kids. So we're not ignoring our students. I just want you to know that apprenticeships are valuable, on-the-job training is valuable, and I support it, and I believe the board supports it as well. So I just want to go on the record with that comment.
Any other board member comments? Laura, I know I didn't want you to feel like I left that whole piece out with you. What, obviously, discussing programming and the way that works, that's really something from, to discuss with the superintendent and have a meeting with him first on there. And then if there's something that we can act upon on there, that's what I'd recommend. So I'm going to ask the superintendent to reach out to you. And would you mind reaching out to her and have a conversation with the synchronous to this, day programs on? But thank you for, I don't feel like I left you out there, because trust me, I teach, I hear that from parents constantly, my kid's sitting at home and, I get home at 6 o'clock and nothing's done. I have a son that's sort of like that right now that,
It's hard figuring out, I'm 25 years old, and helping a 14-year-old figure out their portal is very confusing, and sometimes there's not due dates. Sometimes teachers say they're not using this portal, but they're using this portal, and having to navigate so many different things for 14, 15, 16-year-olds, but a 25 can't even navigate it and set those deadlines for kids when they're still working is, I think, very challenging. And then having those kids, my sister and my brother and sister, look up to me, but I can't help them. I didn't know the way they're growing up in the pandemic. So it's definitely challenging. And we see the kids praying.
well, I know, like I said, I have a daughter who's very self-motivated and gets all her stuff done. And I have a son who, 10 o'clock at night says, I got homework that I didn't do today. So yeah, I get it. I know how that's a very challenging piece. Any other board member comments? I want to compliment our staff, particularly those that were working in these different sporting events that were out back and are working our security line up front. In just conversations with the other school districts, they've said that our people who have been working the gates have been the most professional and courteous of the districts that they've gone to contests in. So I want you to pass that along to them, that that you're doing a great job, because people are noticing that.
And they have cool jackets.
I know.
I love the jackets. I want one.
Well, it's like
They say security on the back.
Oh yeah. Well, and then they have the car. Someone had the car parked out there, so when you were coming in, it was like you had to really go through security gates. I mean, Mike thought at home when he was coming here, So. All right. Then we have an executive session item to discuss then tonight. So I could call for a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of the employment of particular persons and the sale of real property.
I'll make a motion.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries.